If I call it creative principles, I can cast a wider net. So that's kind of where it all started.
How did you start that? Why did you start this podcast? How did you get into that whole space in the first place? Just tell me a little bit about yourself. That'd be great.
Like 10 years ago, I lived in LA. I got a job writing for Creative Screenwriting magazine. So like I would go meet with screenwriters and it's kind of been up and down, but like and they like changed ownership. It was a while I didn't write for them and they liked what I did before so much they kind of brought me back. So I was the only remote worker. And now that's all normal thanks to like COVID and stuff like that. But so somewhere in there, like 5 years into it, I was like, hey, we have all this great audio. We're just recording interviews. Now I'm recording video. And I'll actually offered to host a show for them. Like, why don't we do a Crave Screenwriting podcast? I'll host it. They said, you keep the audio, do what you want to with it. So I went from creative screenwriting to creative principles, even though I was mostly talking to screenwriters. So that's kind of been going on that's like that basically led to the origin of it. And then simultaneously, I've been in marketing for 10 years too. So I worked at ClickFunnels. I worked for people like Russell Brunson and Pace Morby. And now I'm working with Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street guy. So I've been doing marketing a lot too. So I'm kind of trying to combine some of those things in as well. So I'm very obsessed with like basically now I call it like atomic habits for writers. Like after James Clear came out with that book, I'm like, well, that's what I've been talking about.
So, did you have a goal in mind when you started this, or was it just sort of, let me just start this and see how it goes, see where it leads?
Not a real specific goal, like because I still write for the magazine. It's my longest job I've had. So like that's still there. So like basically everyone I write for them is simultaneously a podcast and I'll write a print interview out of it. So I get paid for all those. So like I could almost do it on autopilot. Like I'll give you some advice that's different than that, but like because of the way that this is structured, I was really casual about it. I didn't put a lot of time into growth early on. I'd like just recently have like been trying to
Mm.
like kind of grow it some. And now I'm just like I'm on like lists for Amazon, Netflix, whatever, and they pitch me people. I don't have to go find people. And it's always been like that. And I'm really fortunate in that. So if you can find if I were to give someone advice who are going to interview authors, like find book publishers who are regularly coming out with people and they'll pitch
Mm.
you who you can talk to. Yours might be different for that. And I do reach out to people now, so I can tell you kind of how I go about that.
Mm.
But yeah, it's like I'm very fortunate that it worked out the way it worked out and I could just kind of like coast and do it.
That's really good. Yeah, that was one of my things I wanted to ask you. Like, what is the process in terms of, do you find your guests or do they come to you, and how does that work? Mhm.
So it's all promotional. You wouldn't pay anyone. I haven't heard of any examples where like you'd want to pay anybody, but I wouldn't do that because it kind of start a bad precedent for you. You can think of ways you can you can help them out other than just them being on your show. Can you do something extra, for them, something like that, if that makes sense. Like, but typically like they're like you look for people who have a reason to come on your show. So there's people that are on my list that I want to talk to that I couldn't reach out and talk to them, but they've got a movie coming out, they've got a book coming out. All of a sudden, they've got a 6 week window where they're open to these conversations. And a lot of times when I do get someone big like Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, the reason why I got him, I would say, is because they actually came to me. So sometimes they come to the magazine. He actually came to me is because he was doing a passion project. And those are the best people to talk to anyway, because they're not phoning it in. So they're telling you like really important stuff. And if you listen to my interviews, 80% of it is evergreen. I just ask them whatever I want to ask them. And the last little bit, I'll talk about whatever they want to talk about. But
Mhm.
that's kind of the benefit of having the podcast. That's why it's like,
Yeah,
I don't really make money doing it. I make a little bit, but it's like I would do it for free because I get to ask my favorite people whatever I want to ask them. Every now and then you'll say something and it's funny when I'm like so sure about something and I'll say, "So do you do this and you write this way?" And they'll be like, "No." And they'll just tell me something totally opposite. Those are always super interesting too. So I turned all these interviews into my first book, Ink by the Barrel, and like I would say there's ideas in that book that kind of contradict each other, but like my goal is to make people prolific writers. So it doesn't, there's not one path that fits all. It's like this works for this person, this works for that person. So but it's definitely like scratching your own itch. That's what's gonna help you do it long term for sure.